Welcome back, Johnny Watchers. Games Workshop in the 90s was full of colour, green bases and backdrops. No army photo shoot was complete without its scenic painting in the back. The scenic backdrop was truly the unsung hero of the 90s. And with my Howling Griffin army coming to an end, it only seems appropriate to create my own 90s scenic backdrop. Welcome back, guys. So I am going to try and paint my very own backdrop. Full disclaimer here, I am not a professional artist. I have never painted a scenic painting in my life. This is going to be a very much suck it and see approach. But what I did do was get some inspiration from Crown of Command. Over at his channel, he did a very nice video on how to paint a scenic backdrop. So I'm going to follow those processes, albeit change it up in my own way. I'll put a little link in the top corner for his video so you can get over there and see how he does his. So what have I got to do this painting? I went to my local hobby store and I picked up some craft paints. I simply got the prime colours, red, yellow and blue, thinking that I can pretty much mix any colour out of those three colours. And I'm going to use them as my base to put down all my block colours that I may need in the picture. So I've got my paint. Now I need something to paint on. So at the same hobby store, I picked up a canvas. Most hobby stores will provide these type of things. So the canvas is about 100 centimeters by 50 centimeters wide. So I have my paint and I have my canvas. I just need something to paint with. Going for a bit of a two-pronged approach here. First one is to use sponges and then the other is to use brushes. I had an old foam carry case laying around, so I simply just chopped up the foam and that is my sponge. For brushes, I simply using some old nylon tip brushes, and also I use a decoration brush as well, which you'll see later on. So what am I actually trying to achieve? I want to mimic as much as possible the backdrop that was used for the Howling Griffin army by Fred Reed. And breaking that painting down to its simple form, it has a yellow sky, green hills and grass, some mountains and a castle type building to the right. So as you can see, I have dabbed in the yellow sky so far, so that's the base colour. I'm now going to mix between the yellow and blue to create a green. I'll then proceed to form the hills with the green colour. Using the sponge, I'll just dab this in. So I've now mixed up some brown and I'm just going to come in and get the middle section there, and that's going to form sort of my desert at the back of the painting. Again, I'm not being neat at all here. I'm just blocking in the colours at the moment. No detail whatsoever is thought about in this at this section. Just blocking in some colour. Basically, I'm putting down some base coats. Just as a side note, where the brown is mixed in with the green, it's not really by design, that's just me using the same sponge. So once I've got the sort of composition of the background of the painting done, I'm now going to come back in and reinforce those colours where they're really patchy. I'm just going to come back in with the yellow, the browns, the greens, just to block out those colours a bit more. So now I want to try and get some texture into the colours. I want to start getting some blends. And I quickly realised, and this was really by trial and error, it was actually easier to do drops of paint onto the areas I want to blend with different slightly different colours. So here I'm using some acrylic paints I found, and they're just slightly different colour greens, and I've just marked them with little dots around where I'm going to paint, and I get the decoration brush and I use that to literally blend them all together. And I found this was a much easier way of creating a blend, sort of wet blending as such, with the acrylics and getting a sort of a solid colour. So taking that lesson I learned on the green areas, I'm now working on the sky, and I want to get a bit more drama in the sky. So what I'm doing here is the same technique. I'm dropping some acrylic paints down. So I'm using different colours here. I'm using like an ochre colour, I'm using a yellow, I'm using a grey, and I'm using a white. And I'll drop them across the entirety of the sky, and in different intervals I'll have different sections of the colour, and I'll brush that down with the decoration brush to then blend and slowly get that sort of dramatic sky effect. So now I'm happy I've got my basic outline for the painting. I'm coming in now and I'm starting to add the details or elements that are going to be in the painting. So here I've just started adding a shape in that's going to be mountains. I didn't press record to start with, so you didn't see me put the initial shape in, but now I'm just sort of creating that sort of cragged look of a load of mountains in the distance. So once I've got my mountains in, I then start outlining where I want this castle slash palace to be sitting within the painting. So first of all, I'm just literally outlining the shape of the building with some black and a fine brush. So once I've got that outline in, I'm just going to block it in with a brown. It's not going to be a brown building, but that's going to help me create my shadows later on when I'm painting in the detail. So I'm now happy I've got the composition of the painting sorted. I'm now going to come in and start creating some detail to the painting, and by doing that I'm going to come in with some highlights and shadows. Simply what I'm doing here is I'm using a sponge to start creating the effect of more rocks within that rock shape that I painted. I'm using a very dark grey to do this. So as any good content creator should do, I didn't press record, but simply I was just adding in some more textured colours to the rock area, simply coming from a darker to a lighter grey, and just picking out the edges of where I think there's going to be a mountain or a rock. And I'll just keep getting lighter and lighter. Here I'm just putting in an even lighter grey on the very tips, almost to give that sort of snowy effect. And then one final highlight, almost a white really, so sort of a very light grey coming in here. I then next turn my attention to the palace, and here I'm going to use the sponge again, and I'm going to come in with a dark grey, trying to keep those shadows where I can, and I'm going to start building up some greys to create sort of hopefully a fairly realistic palace or building in the background. So I'm just adding to the grey mix, bringing it lighter and lighter, just bringing in those highlights into the building. So just know I'm still using the sponge, I'm just simply colouring it in with the sponge. I'm just going to let the video play whilst I highlight up the building. Okay, so now I'm going to start concentrating on the grass or the hills. I'm going to highlight them up with different colours of green. As you can see there in the video, I've got my generic gaming model paints out, and I'm using them, and I'm just going to dab over the highlights, and I'm just going to try my best to create like a hill effect. Again, not worrying about being neat, just keeping it very fluid. So once I've got my first highlights down, I'm going to come back in with my second and my third, and I'm trying to always keep the strokes going one way, so it's like grass being blown in the wind, and hopefully that effect comes across in the painting at the end. So once I finished the grass, I'm afraid I didn't film the last part of the work, and that was to detail the building. I also came back in on the sky and did the same technique as I did originally, where I dropped some drops of paint and then overbrushed them with the decorator's brush. I did that to give the appearance of clouds being in the foreground, which helps to move those mountains back into the background and appear more in the distance. And there we go, I have my 90s infused backdrop. So guys, I'm no artist, and this is by no means perfect, and it really probably doesn't hold much against the original, but it's a backdrop. That's all it needs to be. It needs to be something that is barely visible but gives the illusion of depth to your photos. And I think this shows if I can do it, I'm sure you can too. I made a number of mistakes when painting this, but it's paint. You can just paint straight over those mistakes. Give it a try, you'll be amazed what you can conjure up. Thank you so much for making it through to the end of the video. And if you want to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell button. There's always the Discord link in the comments below. Jump into the Discord, come and say hi to me, I'm always there. And with that, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next video. I'll catch you later.